All right. Hi everyone. Welcome to this Saturday Socratic dialogue.
Yeah, we're live now.
All right. Hi everyone. Welcome to this Saturday Socratic dialogue on literature. We have two teams here. Could the team members please introduce themselves?
Hello everyone, I'm Rajnikant and I'm from team WordBridge and I'm a software developer in Vishkarma.
Hi everyone, I'm Amruta. I work as a content intern for Unique Biotech and today I am part of Team WordBridge.
Hi everyone, I am Suruchi Bibikar from Team WordBridge and I'm a part of talent acquisition team.
Hi everyone, I'm Archana. I'm coach for Team WordBridge.
Hello everyone, I am Salnik and I am a part of Team Justice League.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ovi, and I'm also part of Team Justice League.
Hi everybody, I'm Rangnath. I'm also a part of Justice League and I am helping UB with building some systems.
Hello everyone, I'm Dia and today I'm the coach for Team Justice League and I work as an organizational psychologist in Deep Thought.
Yeah, Simran, do you want to go next?
Yeah. So before starting the session, I request him, Worldbridge, to tell us that why you put your team name as Worldbridge.
Yeah.
Sorry, Simran. I think there's some confusion. I meant for the introduction.
Yeah,
Do you
sure.
want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So hello everyone. I am Simran and I am the co-moderator for today's ST.
Hi everyone. I'm Paridhi and I'll be the moderator with Simran for today's session. So to start the ST, which team would like to go first?
We will go first.
All right. Yeah, Simran, please continue.
Yeah, so I just asked that before starting the session, I request him, Worldbridge, to tell us why you put your name as Worldbridge.
Yeah, so the name WordBridge is because we are trying to bridge the gap between the ancient literature and the current uh, sequential trends which are going on. So basically, it's the connection between word connection between the past and the present sequences which we are trying to bridge. So the name WordBridge.
Okay, so understanding what is literature. In a very simple term, literature is basically collection of words which we can use to tell our story, share our ideas or experiences. There are various forms of literature such as prose, poetry, drama, philosophy. And why is literature so important? Because literature, it is a proof of human creativity. It helps us think deeper and it stirs our imagination. That's the significance of literature. If we look at origin of literature, it has been there even before the spoken language had evolved. It starts from the cave paintings, stone carvings, then it moved on to scrolls, books. Nowadays we have ebooks. So basically the journey has been from stone carvings to tablets. And literature has not only helped us document the events in the history or the past, but it has also helped in preserving knowledge and applying that knowledge. And at any given point, literature is largely influenced by the demography, tradition, culture, and the socio-political situations. And the most crucial thing that I feel literature does is it bridges it brings the dimension of reality and imagination together. In the sense, with literature, we can make the reality more real using literature.
Hi, Amrita, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Just a reminder, each team has a time limit of 3 minutes. So please don't exceed the time limit.
Hello everyone. So literature helps to understand the world by diving deeper into exploring human behavior and different perspective of cultures. And at last, it also fosters empathy in readers for others. And literature can also help to understand oneself also by doing self-reflection, such as thinking deeply about yourself, your feelings, thoughts, and action. And also, it lets you understand your own emotional responses in different scenarios.
Okay, so like we said, so how we can convert how we can transform the complex literature which is available into simple sequence of events. For example, there are many scriptures, there are many manuscripts which are there, which are very complex in nature. So, to make them simpler, what the core idea is to basically design a system which can interpret the complex literature into simple sequence of events, like diagrammatical representation, or we can say using flow charts to make it easy and interpretable for everyone. So the purpose is same as well, to make it more convenient for the people or the target audience. And how will it work? So basically, we are taking the input as a piece of text which has to be interpreted, and the output will be the flow chart which will interpret that literature text into a sequence of events. And for that, we are using a text stack as front end as React, and for data storage, we can use PostgreSQL to store the data. So, in conclusion, we can say that literature, it shapes our understanding, it fosters empathy, self-discovery, and it is a platform which, enriches lives, and it drives the progression for the future generations to come up. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Team World Bridge. Now I request Team Justice League to go with your questions.
Just one question. There was one point mentioned about how literature can allow us to do self-reflection. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So basically, when we go about with the literature, so basically there are some nuances, or there are some tech, the terminologies which we can associate personally also. As we say, literature drives emotions. So it can, reflect upon. Now, suppose I'm reading an emotional uh, dialect or a manuscript, it can correlate to me as well, that, I am that kind. So in that sense.
And is there any specific sort of literature that we can relate with, or is it generalized?
It can be generalized in terms of what genre you are preferring to go about.
Okay. And what about, let's say, literature which have been created hundreds of years ago, right? So the cultures were different, the customs were different, the traditions were different. Can we really relate with situations of those times?
So it actually depends on the target. I mean, someone who is, let's suppose I am a literature enthusiast and I am into that. So, I would probably have an inclination towards reading those ancient manuscripts, say, or the medieval history, you say, and I can correlate with that, and I can have a self reflection on it as well.
Got it.
Yeah, any more follow-up questions, Agni?
No, not for now, at least.
Okay. Any more questions?
Yeah, sorry.
You can go over here.
Okay, I just wanted to ask, how will you ensure that maybe the depth of the meaning is not removed with how, because you want to remove like the complexity of the literature, right, to make it simpler. But sometimes complex pieces of literature are meant to be complex because they hold so much depth and so much meaning. So how will you ensure that that depth or meaning is not lost in translation?
All right. So basically, the idea is to make, I mean, it's just, the complex terminologies which are used in literature to make it a synonymically easier terms. And it's to basically interpret it easier, so that, you can go about reading it in a sequential manner, you say, or in a diagrammatic way, you say, so that, you can more relate to it, which would obviously not lose its depth prior making sure.
Ovi, any follow-up questions on that?
No.
Okay.
So I have a follow-up on that. So when you're suggesting that it is simplifying and you're finding a synonymical meaning for complex, stories or literature. So your system is going to be an aid to understand them better, or will it going to be the only source that a reader could come in, or somebody who's seeking knowledge come in and then they could get everything out of it?
Um, so it will serve purpose for, someone who is going about a literature, and probably they are not easy to interpret. So it's like, it's a easy interpretable system which you can probably think about to serve for the, now let's suppose there are students who in the school who have some history related things which are generally not that interactive or engaging. So we can try to make it more engaging and interactive so that, it can be easily consumed as well.
But do you think if different people interpret literature in different ways, how would it be, a singular, meaning, or what would be the best interpretation? How would, you figure that out? Let's say, I mean, for example, let's say Mahabharatam or Ramayana, there are multiple versions which multiple people interpret in different ways, and it becomes sometimes very difficult to gauge which one is the exact meaning or very close meaning to it.
Right.
So, how would that be tackled?
Okay. So yeah, this can be one of the bottleneck which we can address, because yeah, everyone has a different way of interpreting the literature. But from our end, we can make we can make sure that the literature which we have given as an input, it tries, I mean, it makes justice to what is its original meaning, so that it's basically the exact meaning or the real purpose what it is serving to deliver is put it in an easy way. That's the sole purpose. It's not trying to change or focusing on any different aspect than the originality of it.
And I think the idea is not to interpret the meaning for people, but just to make the text, just to simplify
Simplify
it,
it.
not to interpret it.
Okay. Any other questions or follow-up questions from Team Justice League? All right. In that case, we can go ahead with round two, Team Justice League's pitch. Before you pitch, please tell us, the meaning behind your team's name, why Justice League, and also please keep in mind the 3-minute time limit.
Okay, so we went with the name Team Justice League because, as we know, it represents the superhero group of diverse superheroes, all with the common theme and the common goal of empowering people with justice. So, similarly, we've chosen 3 eras in time where justice was administered through literature. And similar to the Justice League, we want to contribute all those ideas together to form like a linear type of justice.
All right. Thank you. Is anyone screen sharing from your team? Yeah.
All right. Hello, everyone. So, as Ovi already put it, so we will be basically showcasing how the concept of justice has has changed and has been influenced by literature over eras and centuries, and how it has changed human societies overall. So, yeah, we can go to the next slide. So if we start from the ancient cultures and the ancient civilizations, if we go back to Mesopotamian civilization, they used to store, laws in the form of codes in written stone tablets, which are also called stills. So one of these famous codes are called Code of Hammurabi, and Code of Hammurabi has information about everything, like all kinds of lifestyle, legal, everything is mentioned there. And though the law at that time was used to be very much harsh and very much retribution related. So a quote from the Code of Hammurabi is an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, which basically means the retribution has to be direct. and exact, similar to what was imparted. So, and this kind of this kind of justice was usually mandated or validated through the form of divine justice. So it is used to say, people used to say that gods gave this justice to people, and so that's why these are infallible. So people used to encode these kind of laws into literature through proverbs, through through written forms, like it is mentioned here in the image. And these ultimately gave way to tangible writing systems and legal systems, which nowadays we utilize in in writing constitutions, in writing written law journals and everything. So yeah.
So I will be talking about justice in the Middle Ages, which is around the 14th century. And similar to the Code of Hammurabi, the core concept was that justice was seen as spiritual or divine retribution. Using Christian theology, it was the common notion that it was God's will that morality would be determined, and therefore justice would be determined. So the literature in question here, the case study, is about Dante's Divine Comedy, particularly Dante's Inferno, which depicts the 9 rings of hell. And there was this concept called contrapasso, which basically describes poetic justice and the ways in which the punishment would fit the crime, tit for tat, so to speak. This influenced the way that people perceived justice in those times as well, by balancing morality with punishing people appropriately according to the crime that they committed.
Fast forward to 19th century, justice is more perceived as a systemic fairness and accountability. So next slide. So in 19th century, Upton Sinclair published a critique called The Jungle, depicting unsanitary conditions and exploitation of workers in Chicago's meat packing industry. Now, as soon as a certain concern was raised, the justice had to tune to create a fair and a more sustainable future where industries, businesses, and societies are coming together. Now, next slide. So going to different ages, we see that how literature has sort of helped helped justice evolve, right? So literature helps you in record philosophies, interpret and question them, so that you can improvise to suit that day's requirements. And just as we looked at the examples. And literature has helped to expose a lot of societal flaws, even if we see, the way mass medias or newspapers take care. Now, yeah. So, ending our pitch with a question as a food for thought. Taking care into account of all of this, how do you think literature influences justice in 21st century? Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Team Justice League. I request Team World Bridge to go with your questions.
So how does literature influences the justice system?
Can you please repeat? I didn't get your question.
Rajnikant has essentially asked you the question you put in your QFD. How does literature influence the justice system?
Right. So the literature influences justice system in two ways. First is literature allows spreading, or literature is a way or a mediator for spreading knowledge. By knowledge, I mean basically when I'm mentioning justice, who is going to follow that particular code of justice? Who are going to follow them? The society is going to follow them. But how are we going to mediate that to the society? Literature is the way through which we can mediate it to society. The best example for this is our Indian Constitution. Our Indian Constitution is also a form of literature that we utilize in understanding what is good, what is right, and what is wrong, right? And the second way through which literature can also help in understanding what is actually right and what is wrong, essentially putting the definition of what justice is basically through, like, justice is essentially a form of, like, so whatever needs society has, whatever society goes through, justice is framed from that only. And society shows that, showcases that through the form of literature. So the best example for this is French Revolution. French Revolution took up so many new concepts of romanticization, of personification, and these all came because of people were oppressed. and they wanted the concept of a system where, there is no oppressive monarchy or no system, no autocratic system where someone is oppressing somebody. So that is why they came up with the systems to ultimately showcase the concept of democracy.
Okay. I would just request everyone to keep their answers a little brief so that we have enough time to, go into more questions as well. But thank you, Sagnik. Rajnikant, do you have any follow-up questions? Does that answer your question?
Yes, yes, it answers.
Uh, I have a question. So you said that literature influences justice system, but don't you think so? Literature is influenced by personal biases, and whereas the justice system is more universal and it's for a greater good, societal good, not an individual good. I understand that individuals make society, but do you understand my question?
Can you brief a little on personalized literature?
So, see, somebody when writing something, a book, a text, whatever, it is influenced by that person's opinions. So it has lots of personal biases, what that person has experienced throughout, her or his life.
Right.
Uh,
So,
Amrita, I would just like one clarification. Are you asking about how literature influences justice system or how it influences the idea of justice?
See, it influences the idea of just how it influences the idea of justice.
All right.
If I understood correctly, it's like how their biases influence their idea of justice, which in turn influences the literature itself, which will carry this idea of justice to the larger part of the world. So in this entire chain, how are their biases playing a role is her question, right?
Yes.
uh,
How would you
and
factor in individual bias in all of this?
right. So, I mean, that was the core of our, the whole presentation that we were doing. So, if you look at Hammurabi, there was the Hammurabi itself was, the leader and who said that, the justice is eye for eye. And, over a period of time, literature has enabled that, right? Like, it was what, around 565 BC. And we have been carrying it for more than 2000 years. What is helping us to, go back and evaluate and change, to today's needs, right? Like, that's one part of, let's say, literature is
You didn't
doing that.
answer her question. You're going all over the place. Can you please answer her question? Her question is, how do
Yeah.
you factor in biases in all of this? You're
So
saying bias is good, is it?
no, I mean, I would look at that literature helping validate your laws too, right? So okay, so
How is
literature.
literature validating your laws?
So literature is just one part is spreading that law. The other part is people raising concerns over it, right? That is also enabled through literature. Okay, you pass a law, but end of the day, if, the medium to raise a concern is that okay, if it is good, if it is bad, or where it's falling off, that
All of
also
this is
is
fine,
through
but how is
literature.
it going back to that biases being addressed, in the idea of justice? I mean, law and all of that can come a little later, but what is your idea of justice? The way you shape your idea of justice is influenced by your bias, no? So her question is, how are you going to factor that bias that will come into your idea of justice?
I would like to answer it. So bias is like if you write any form of literature, anyone who is writing it, bias will always be there, and there will be problems that will be arising. Let's say for a person who is reading it, actually, he will be seeing it from a different perspective, right? He will be seeing it from the eyes of somebody else, and their opinion will change about it. And if I talk from the perspective of justice, justice will also change from it, and there will be issues with justice, as we showed now in the
Sarnik, if I understood you correctly, you're saying by listening to so many such biases, the overall idea of justice itself will evolve. You're
in a
saying
way.
bias is ingrained, you can't run away from it. But when you do so much of literature, you expose yourself to so many perspectives, so the biases overall average out or something like that.
Yeah, in a way. And also, justice is technically like a river. It changes as society changes, as society's needs changes, as society's mindset changes, justice will change because
Okay.
society will
Got,
fit with it.
got it. Too much of poetry. Yeah, back to you, Amrita, if you have a follow-up question to that. Yeah.
The justice system might, change, but the fundamentals will always remain the same, no?
Will in the same, Sagnik.
What do you mean by fundamentals?
Back to you, Amrita.
Yeah, so see, killing somebody was bad in olden days. It is bad even now.
Back to you, Sagnik.
Okay. If we take from the Code of Hammurabi, it says that basically it says that if I kill somebody, then I will also get killed. Right? That was the punishment during those times. Nowadays, if we see, if I kill somebody, I might not get killed unless I did
So
somebody
the
Back to
form
heinous
of
crime.
the form of punishment.
Back to you, Amrita. Yeah.
So the form of punishment has changed, but the definition of what is wrong and what is not.
Got you, Amrita. Back to you, Sagnik.
The definition of what is wrong and what is right has changed. No, it has changed because the sense of
Got
morality
you,
has been
Sagnik. Got you,
introduced.
Sagnik. I'm back to you, Amrita.
I don't think so. The definition has changed. It's just that the way we are dealing with the problem has changed.
Wait, what is the definition
Why?
that is not? Wait. What is the definition that has not changed?
That killing somebody is still wrong.
Got you.
There's
Back
no
to you, Sagnik.
change in that.
Got you. Back to you, Sagnik.
Even if I say the statement, killing somebody is not right, how is society going to portray it?
No,
What is
wait.
the mindset of society?
No, Sagnik. No, don't take it on a different thread. You said fundamentals don't change. She's saying you said fundamentals change. She said fundamentals don't change, and she gave an example. Do you agree that this is changed?
Yes and no, both. Like
Why no? Why no? Why no?
because society, the literature is dependent on society. Society's moral sense of
What are
morality
you?
is
What are
always.
you? Did it change or did it not change? That killing people is bad was an opinion before, is an opinion now. Did it change? Did it not change?
It did not change.
So she's saying these first principles don't change. Do they change or do they not change?
They do not change. But
Okay,
how people take it will change.
No.
Okay, yeah.
Amrita, he agrees that things don't change. Now what?
Yes.
But he says the next thread ki the way people perceive it will change.
No, it will not change. The way people will deal with the situation might change.
Okay, Sagnik, example for how perception will change.
So capital punishment was
Okay.
okay back then, but it is not okay now. So the way of dealing with it has changed. That I agree.
Okay. So there used to be a very powerful civilization called Greek, the Holy Greek Empire, right? And there was also a very powerful civilization called Carthaginian civilization, right? Now Greek Empire once attacked Carthage and ransacked it, basically mixing it to the ground, and they
No,
took
wait,
many
Sagnik,
slaves.
wait. Let's control our emotions. They're running quite high. But the argument is the premise is perceptions don't change. So can you give an example where changing from past to now?
Yeah, I took the concept of slavery. The concept of slavery is an example. Why we not keep slaves now? Let's say I attack some country. Why shouldn't I keep slaves if I defeat it?
Got you. Back to Amrita. The perception around slavery has changed. Okay, so now you agree that perceptions change. Okay, now back to you for a counter question if you have one.
Not really at the moment. I don't.
I have one question.
Yeah.
I want to know that how controversial literary works are there. So how will they be justified in this challenging or changing, the legal practices
Got
or
you, Suruchi.
yeah.
Back. Team Justice League.
So maybe to give an example, like maybe like Mein Kampf by Hitler, right? If you're talking about a controversial piece of literature, just to understand you better, right? You're talking about how
In normal sense, any controversial literature, how it can be justified in this changing legal norms is my whole question.
But how would we come to that conclusion? How would we come to that conclusion that this piece of controversial literature is what's
got your way? Who decides that it is controversial?
The target audience, or in general sense, if it is a controversial literature which has both negative.
Got you, Suruchi.
So like for example with Sadnik and the slavery, right? People have used existing literature and interpreted that literature in ways to justify slavery, for example. Those systems were then obviously like the things did happen and it was atrocious that it happened. But I think because there were people who were able to express their ideas through literature, it combated the existing controversial literatures, which then led to people questioning and evoking change.
Wait,
So, for example,
I'm not sure if that answered our question.
like in terms of how the controversial literature has influenced.
No, we asked who decides.
Yes.
You said the majority. She said the majority decides, right?
The victors, I think, yeah, the victors decide.
So, but Suruchi, what if my idea of it is controversial and Sagnik's idea is it's not controversial?
But then the legal forms are also changing now. In general, if a controversial literature is there, how will it be justified in a changing or a an uneven practice? How are we going to be in that?
How big of a part do controversial literature plays in framing justice systems?
But then your idea is whole revolving around that, right? That's what I'm trying to get to.
Our idea is revolving around all forms of literature, solely not on controversial types of
Okay.
literature. It is a part of it. It can influence
got
it.
you, got you. But would controversial literature also influence your system?
Of course. It is a generalized thing. We took it in a generic manner.
But what if it can influence laws in a very negative way? That's the concern she's bringing in. Because
If
usually controversial literature can shape perception faster, right? So how do you factor that in?
who is perceiving it, who is understanding that it is negative? Society, right? Because society is suffering from it. If society is suffering from it, the way the literature is being framed in modern eras would change. Ultimately, the justice
So
system would change.
what are the checks and balances for this?
Society itself, the way society, if anything is bad, who perceives it as bad? How are we understanding something is bad and something is good?
What if the society doesn't, recognize this?
Why
How will
wouldn't
be
it recognize
justice
this? It is
brought
already
about?
suffering, right? If it is going through something bad, it is suffering. If it is suffering, it will try to do something to, fix that situation.
Going by your argument, slavery should have been fixed within 10, 15 years. Society
Exactly.
was suffering with slavery.
Okay. Then I guess I should go back to what Ovi said, right? History is technically written by victors. Like
So
majority,
your judicial system is also created by the victors, no?
not by victors, but by people who are in power.
Yeah,
Basically.
yeah. Okay, sure, yeah. By the establishment, right?
Yeah.
So how is your system trying to make it equal for everyone, especially if controversial literature can be abused by them to create that? What if there's jingoism in the country and I abuse jingoistic literature to defend कि our soldiers are dying, so we need this, and I influence everybody to accept a law.
That's why we have amendments, right? Like we can amend laws in constitution.
But
We can make changes in
what is the
laws.
check and balance for this?
I think that is, the overall objective of the justice system will itself decide, right? So people come together and create a justice system, and if it is not meeting the overall objective, then it would go for an amendment, or the justice system itself will fail.
Got it, Ranganath. So now, just adding to your point through a question. So this essentially means that it's not the establishment, but it's also the voiceless who need a voice in this process.
Correct.
So that it's not only the establishment which speaks out, but even those so-called slaves or so-called oppressed ones get a chance to debate.
Correct.
So how would they participate in your process? Literature. Literature is traditionally perceived to be a privilege of the elite.
But hasn't it changed already in the modern era, where you have for freedom for thought, freedom to speak up?
Has it?
Debatable.
With readership declining.
I mean, democracies are built around it, right? So,
but readership has declined, right? Readership overall is declining. So many print publications are dying.
That has switched to soft media, right? I mean, there's still people. We're going on
Digital
YouTube
media are
now.
dying. Digital media are dying. I'll give you a list of digital publications that are dying.
Okay.
And how many of the voiceless have access to the digital publication? That is.
So then in this entire process, yeah, that goes back, right? So this is only in the hands of a few elite. So how is this a democratic process at all? Whatever you're
See,
proposing.
a way to do it is, of course, making the system like decentralizing the system. I'm not going into communism and all. I'm saying that creating a system where every person in the society.
How? How do you decentralize is a question.
It depends on the social structure. It depends on the mindset of the society. If society needs democracy, if society can do well with
Simple question.
democracy.
How do you take this literature to the masses?
I think creating more mediums and empowering the literary community itself. So there is a segment which is elite, has access to soft media. There is a segment which has, which is still going with conventional newspapers or on paper media. But the whole community itself, it empowers to meet the demands of both the worlds, bring in polls and surveys more, more generic to suit everybody's needs. I think that might take a
Okay,
direction.
we will probably stop this here. But Suruchi, I think it was a very valid question. But I think the problem is the question is going into a more fundamental question of
Yeah.
how do you increase the access to literature, which is, I think, going into a much deeper question, which may warrant a much longer dialogue than this.
Right.
On
See,
that note, I think
if I were to give one small example, Sanskrit was used to be considered as the language of aristocrats, and the works that were written in Sanskrit usually common people couldn't write them. That's why Prakrit came, right? Prakrit was kind of a common people's language, and after Prakrit came, people used to preach in Prakrit. People used to sit together and talk in Prakrit of the literary works. They were translated. So language is one mediator of doing it, I guess. And of
yeah,
course,
so
as Ranganath said,
you might need more inclusive stories, more relatable stories. So stories can be a great way of spreading literature, right?
yeah.
Anyway, we'll stop this here.
Another beautiful
Oh,
point Parithi
no.
mentioned.
It's getting late. It's getting late. We'll stop this here. In India, dialogues used to go on for 50 days, 80 days in ancient India, and this is probably why, right? We'll stop this here. No, the argumentative Indian will never stop. I
Parithi
hope
mentioned a very beautiful point, which I didn't answer. It is
we'll
also
stop, we'll
very
stop, we'll stop, we'll
controversial.
stop, we'll stop. The argumentative Indian
Yeah.
will never stop. Amartya
We can
Sen.
answer it in the post SD reflections. We'll end the
Yeah.
SD for
Cool.
now.
Yeah.
So we'll stop this
Uh,
now and we'll take some reflections. Anything new that you realized in this dialogue? And I will request Sagnik not to speak here. The ones who didn't speak much can probably reflect. Yeah. Anything new that you realized in this dialogue? I think this is a little different from the usual business dialogues that we do, right? So anything new that you recognized?
Yeah, I will go about it because this was a blend of both, how literature and I was trying to make it through, how I can put in technicality in this. So it was a whole new combination of both.
What technicality did you put?
As in the pitch which I made, we combined it with the, origins, evolution. So it was a blend of both of it. So it was a fun doing it.
Okay. Anyone, anything interesting that you realized during the dialogue? No?
I can go in. So, in the entire discussion we just had, right, I realized that the literature of the elite, to get the masses to enjoy it or to get the marginalized to read it, you just need to make sure it's accessible. But when it comes to literature of the marginalized or the oppressed, providing access is not going to solve the problem. You have to actually make the people in power, actually make the elite realize the importance of reading it. Just providing access won't do it unless they actually realize the importance of understanding perspectives different from their own, especially perspectives that are of the powerless or the voiceless. A lot of people don't see the value in it on their own.
Okay, so from a personal and professional point of view, what in your worldview has changed after this dialogue?
I think I tend to stay away from literature that talks about, hardships and struggles and yeah, difficulties that people have faced, marginalized literature, so to speak. I personally tend to stay away from it simply because I don't think I can handle the intensity of it. But thinking about it from a justice point of view, from a more moral and ethical point of view, where The people who are privileged are sort of morally obligated to engage with that literature, especially because it feels uncomfortable. I think a lot of us stay away from that discomfort, but it's very important to engage with it, to actually develop that perspective and empathy.
Got you, Paridhi. Anybody else wants to go in? One last reflection we'll take before inviting everybody here. Yeah, Ovi, please go ahead.
Similar to Paridi, I wouldn't necessarily avoid literature around hardships, but rather maybe controversial ones, openly controversial ones, like I mentioned earlier, Mein Kampf. I think it's also important to read these controversial literatures, not so that they can influence us, but because they provide the space for us to expose their contradictions and to critically analyze them. Because you can't just accept all of the good things, and it's also good to contrast with the opposing side.
Interesting. I read one chapter of Mein Kampf and then decided to never read it again.
Yeah.
I was too scared. I thought, "Hey, this guy's going to brainwash me. This guy's too good."
Yeah.
Yeah, over to you, Ranganath. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in overall today's discussion, right, I think what we read is only one piece of it, but what literature does not say, right? Like if only elites are writing a piece of content and only victors are, writing a piece of literature, and then you are missing out on a majority of the masses' opinions which are never written in literature. So I think to enhance personal and professional growth or businesses, I think it will be very important to also know what's not is something that is not available for you to read or listen to.
Cool. I think interesting perspectives. This will go on. In the interest of time, we will let this pause and probably take this as a takeaway. This is what keeps literature interesting, right? That it helps us, I think, expand our mind in a very enjoyable manner. Yeah. Can we